let's get right into this. I got two guests on today and two guys whose faces you all are very familiar with, and I'm going to put them on here one by one. First off, we got the host of 3&D, Paul Lombardi. Paul, how's it going?
Good, Hank. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm really excited to talk some baseball with you, go back and forth a little bit with you over the Yankees and the Mets. But, of course, we got Dom Daniele as well. Pretty much two of the three guests that we had on the last Subway Series roundtable. Dom, how's it going?
Pretty good, Hank. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm super hyped up for this weekend, guys. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I think this is really going to be a make or break weekend for both the teams. And quite frankly, I don't really think I've seen a week like this ever before, like this late in the season in a match between both those teams. And I'm not counting the 2000 World Series, obviously. I'm talking about regular season.
Of course.
Well, it's true. It's definitely true. We usually don't see September Yankees-Mets matchups too that often, but with these two teams being, so deep into the playoff race as they are, it's going to be very interesting. And I think that the winner of this series kind of means a lot more than a normal Subway Series.
For sure. And, it's weird. Both of them, it's funny how in the middle of the season, you had the Yankees and the Mets trending in opposite directions. Like after that Subway Series, the last one, the Yankees were at 500. They were 41-41. It seemed like the sky was falling. Like everyone thought the season was done. Then they proceed to rattle off series win after series win, and they look like they're pretty unstoppable. And the Mets, on the other hand, they suffer injury after injury. Nothing goes right. And then for a whole week, they're on the back pages of the New York newspapers for all the wrong reasons. Yes. And now all of a sudden, it's turning back into that 180 again. I don't get it. But, a wise man once said, well, Susan, you can't predict baseball. And, that's just how it goes. But, Paul, I know you have a lot that you want to say regarding Javier Baez and a lot of the drama that's gone on with the New York Mets. So I'm going to let you take the floor for this one.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Hank. It's been wild. It has definitely been wild. It's been a lot of ups and downs. I think the past week or two has really made me rethink a lot of the stuff that I was furious about, but the bottom line is that there's a lot of answers that need to be, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered this offseason for this Mets team. Regardless of whether we make the playoffs or not, I think that somewhat of the core is there, but the offense needs to be addressed big time. And I think, Javier Baez, it was definitely a bad look a couple weeks ago with the, thumbs down, had to do the apology and stuff, but it was amazing how quickly he came back and, nobody even talks about it anymore because of the game-winning run that he scored too. That's just kind of like how baseball works. It's pretty amazing how the script kind of flipped on that, but we beat up on the Marlins and the Nationals a bit these past couple of weeks, which we had to do. If we didn't do that, we'd probably be completely eliminated. We're only 4 games out now. We got some deciding series coming up. Our offense has been amazing the past couple of weeks after being completely dormant for the past month. But it's really going to tell if we're a playoff team in the Yankees series. And then we got the Cardinals. We're playing in Milwaukee. There's another tough series too coming up. I know we have the Braves at the end of the season. We still have the Phillies too. Like we don't have an easy schedule coming down to the end, so that's really going to be the deciding factor. But I think there's a lot of questions on offense is what has to be addressed this offseason, because I think our pitching is there. I think our starting pitching is there. I want Stroman and Syndergaard back. I think our bullpen is there too. We're developing a good young bullpen. We got some guys under contract too. We're going to have to figure out Lugo. We're going to have to figure out Castro. Their contract's ending soon, but on offense is really going to be the interesting thing. Do we re-sign Javier Baez? That's the big question. And if you do, in my opinion, I think you have to trade. JD Davis has to be traded. Yeah. And either Dom Smith or Jeff McNeil has to be traded too. I think two of those guys have to be traded. And the big question is there going to be a DH in the National League next year too? That's what I want to know, because Dom Smith is a perfect DH. He can be the primary DH against righties. You can hold on to him if there's a DH, and McNeil could become your everyday left fielder. But also the question is, do you give Baez big money? Baez is going to demand probably in the 150 to 200 range. They're thinking probably 6 or 7 years. Do you give him a similar contract to what you gave Lindor? When we do have Ronnie Mauricio coming up as a shortstop, obviously with Lindor, he'd move to second base. Brett Beatty, who's coming up potentially next year, who's perceived as our future third baseman, and Mark Vientos, who's kind of a utility player who's been raking in the minors that they think has a lot of potential, and Khalil Lee too. Khalil Lee came up at the beginning of the season. They kind of threw him into the fire when we had a lot of outfielders on the injured list. And he didn't play that great, but he's been playing great in AAA. And a lot of people are wondering if, we let Conforto walk and, have him take over right field next year. I don't think necessarily we can bank on that happening. You can't really, he's only our number 7, number 8 prospect. He definitely could turn into a starter, but you can't bank on that happening. We definitely have to either retain Conforto or we have to address the outfield in a way. But I think that Baez could be a good addition. There's one guy that I think would be awesome for this team to sign in free agency, and that's Jesus Aguilar.
That would be a good, cost efficient signing for the Mets, I should think. I would not be opposed to that for your sake at all.
Now that's only if there's a DH, obviously, because Pete's our first.
True.
That's only if there's a DH. But if there's a DH, I think he could be a perfect guy, because he is literally the kind of bat that we're missing. Pete drives and runs, and Javier Baez drives and runs too, but we have a bunch of slap hitters, Nimmo, McNeil, that aren't huge RBI guys, and they don't have to be huge RBI guys. But I think Aguilar is one guy that kind of pops into my mind that could be a great platoon DH with Dom Smith next year, say something like that. If there definitely is a DH, it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be a DH.
This is off topic, but if Albert Pujols goes to National League, this is because there will be a DH. He will go to the Cardinals. There's a DH easily.
Definitely.
Well, that's assuming he even returns at all, because he's up there in age at 41 years old. I don't know if he's going to come back next season. By the way, before I forget, we do have a comment here. Clark Posho, one of my good friends, known him probably since I was 9 or 10 years old. He says, "Let's go Mets. The Mets are back, baby." Paul, I'm sure you appreciate that comment.
Yep. Mets are back.
He is one of the biggest Met fans you'll ever meet, by the way. I should point that out there. But in any event, yeah, getting back to the Mets, I look at their schedule. I mean, I think part of the reason they went on that streak is because you have a National Series sandwiched right in between 2 Marlins series. Obviously, the Mets are supposed to win that, although you could also look at it that maybe the players are rallying around the whole Javier Baez thumbs down situation. Yeah. Whatever it is, the Mets, to their credit, are taking care of business, which incidentally was their old victory song years ago at Citi Field and Shea. But, I think it was much needed. And granted, they did lose a few bad games to the Nationals, having an Edwin Diaz blown save in there. And then you had a game where I believe Lindor and Baez actually got benched and they lost by 1 run. So those could also really come back to haunt the Mets. But I think if you look at their schedule, another team they're playing in that stretch, by the way, that we didn't mention, the Red Sox. They have a brief 2-game series at Fenway Park, which I'm going to go on a limb and say that's probably the most meaningful games that they've played at Fenway since maybe the 1986 World Series.
Probably.
No, so these next few weeks, and it starts with the Subway Series, it can really make or break the Mets, regardless of where you look at it. And it's really going to be tough too, because we still don't know whether DeGrom's going to even make it back to the rotation. If you guys get him back, can you imagine how much of a godsend that will be?
I know. That's exactly it. I'm not bracing for DeGrom to come back. It seems like we definitely have to take him easy. He had a partially torn UCL. That's, kind of just, that news kind of just broke yesterday, which was a little shocking that it was that bad. They were telling us it was arm discomfort for such a long time, but there's definitely no need to rush him back. even if we make a playoff push, because the last thing we need is him to have Tommy John surgery for the second time in his career. So I don't think that I'm not really like bracing for him to come back. If he comes back, obviously it would be fantastic, but I think that we got enough depth in our starting rotation too when some other guys come back, and I think that the way things have been going too right now has been pretty solid. I think Syndergaard's going to be on his way back. He probably won't be a starter though. It seems like they're going to use him out of the bullpen.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah, especially coming back from Tommy John. But McGill's been great. Carrasco, we got to try to figure out. He's been struggling a little bit this season, but I think McGill's been doing great. Stroman's had a all-star year. Taiwan Walker's had an all-star year. We've definitely got some other guys who can carry the load.
For sure. And I'll say this too. I think the thing that actually surprised me after their win streak, I didn't realize how close they were to that second wild card spot. Like I didn't realize how much of a cluster what it was. But then again, the Padres have really been collapsing as of late. And while the Reds had like a pretty good stretch, now they're sort of like falling apart, and they're actually tied with the Padres for that second spot. But if you really look at it, I think the Padres technically are ahead by one game in the all-important loss column, and Mets are actually just a little bit closer to that wild card spot than the division, because they're 3.5 games out, 70 wins, 69 losses, and for the division, they are, I want to say, they're the same amount, 3.5 games, but still, you get the idea. Like, do you see that second wild card spot as a possibility, or are you like pretty much all in on that division?
I mean, even since the preseason, we all kind of like geared up for for that not being like really the option. The wild card kind of like just being like kind of a reach, even more of a reach than the division. But I think it's possible. I think the Padres have kind of come down to earth. They have such a stacked team, but the only problem is they've had a lot of injuries. Their rotation has not been great as of late, and the Reds too. Have a pretty solid lineup. They've Joey Votto kind of broke out the second half of this season, like he always does. He always finds a way to put together good numbers every single year. But Castellanos has played great, but they're coming back down to earth a little bit. If we catch fire, I think we could possibly catch a wild card, but I still think that winning the division is the better opportunity to make the playoffs and the more likely opportunity, because the Padres are one win streak away from putting the second wild card to bed. Yeah, in my opinion.
And you really don't want it to come down to that wild card game, because let's face it, and I'm not trying to like offend you right here, but like we know how your bullpen's been in big games over the past few years. And all it takes is really one melt. Forget the fact that it's a one game. Even in a normal best of 7 or best of 5 series, all it would take is one meltdown for the bullpen to change momentum. And I'm not really just saying for the Mets. Like the Yankees too have had that issue, and we'll get to them in a bit. But another thing I want to mention with the Padres, though, if they miss out, though, on the playoffs, it's because of that losing streak they had that involved getting swept. I think they got swept by the Diamondbacks, or at the very least, they lost 2 out of 3, but they also got swept by the Rockies. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
So if the Padres miss out in the playoffs, I just want to mention they have no one to blame but themselves. But the Braves, though, are kind of streaky because since they're not fully healthy, they don't have Acuna. They're still without some of their top starting pitchers. It's definitely not out of the question. But if I were on your side of this whole Subway Series, I would agree with you that the division's what you should be playing for, because, as I said, the wild card game, not only is the wild card game a crapshoot, and I'm not just talking about with the bullpen, the wild card game can be a problem because what if you face a really hot pitcher for the other team?
Yep.
Like, let's say, God forbid, the Yankees are going to go to the wild card game, which is looking more and more likely if they even make the playoffs at all. Like, they could potentially be facing a really hot Chris Sale or one of the pitchers that the Blue Jays got at the deadline, because looking at the Blue Jays, and I said it at the deadline too, I appeared on Alec Walt's show. I said, don't be surprised if the Blue Jays make that run to the wild card. And now that's looking even more and more likely. And, Dom, I think that's now a perfect segue to get into our team, the Yankees. And as I said, the Yankees have really taken another 180 pretty much since that 13-game win streak ended. They won 2 games at Oakland, and after winning the second game, I'm thinking, wow, they got it. They're getting a split at Oakland. Like, this is a place where the Yankees have historically struggled. In fact, up until this year, they'd only won 1 game at the Oakland Mausoleum. But now all of a sudden, you lose 2. Okay, you lose the first game by 1 run. Understandable. You weren't going to win 20 games in a row. But then the second game, they had runners in scoring position problems, and then you let Tony Kemp hit a go-ahead home run.
Yep.
And then they start to lose 2 out of 3 to the Angels. Now, granted, Garrett Cole obviously saved them in the third game. I think that's when you sort of start to feel a little bit nervous, because then you see Aaron Boone's hitting the panic button. He's sitting Luke Voigt despite his hot streak, and then he's going with other relief pitchers who you can't really trust. Although, to be fair, the relief situation hasn't really been something he can control due to injuries, but that's besides the point. Now you lose 2 out of 3 to the Orioles, and the first 2 against the Blue Jays. Now they've really hit rock bottom. And going into that Blue Jays, I don't know about you, Dom, but I was thinking that this was the series that was going to make or break the Yankees.
Hey, this is the toughest team. Like, we're facing one of the hottest teams in baseball, and I knew, it's going to tell us a lot. And the Blue Jays look great. We look lifeless against them. So far right now, no one's scored yet, but hopefully we try to win this game. But, they look, like I said, they look lifeless. Losing to the Orioles like that, losing that series was just god-awful. I don't know how. I just can't. I couldn't even believe that.
Orioles. To be fair, they can't really look lifeless if they haven't batted yet. It's still only the top of the first, and they haven't.
I mean, the series in general.
But no, you're right. They've only scored 1 run in 18 innings against the Blue Jays. And if you really go back, maybe 1 run in the last 20 innings, because I'm including the Baltimore meltdown with Andrew Heaney, who, let's be real, he probably, if the Yankees didn't just all of a sudden trade for him at the deadline, he would have been DFA'd by now.
Easily.
But unfortunately, now at least you got Luis Gil in the rotation. And you know what? Even if Luis Gil has a bad start today, I'm not going to shame him, because if we're being honest, after 3 games and not giving up a run, he should have been staying in the big leagues all along.
Yeah, I didn't understand why they demoted him. You need starting pitching help. He's been great in those 3 starts. Why not keep him up? Why do we have Heaney up? Why do we have Kirksey up? Why? Krisky, I mean. I don't understand. Even Clark Schmidt, too, that's in AAA. I don't know why he's not up.
Clark Schmidt has good stuff. I don't get that either.
I know.
He had some flashes in 2020. What about Davey Garcia? Whatever happened to that guy?
And Davey Garcia, too. He's still in AAA.
He fell off.
Very interesting.
Badly.
It's September, too. Why not call him up?
I'd still trust him over Andrew Heaney at this point. And Brooks Krisky is one of those guys that, like, I ended up, like, going to the Labor Day game against the Blue Jays, too. Like, that was, like, the one game, first time I went to a game in a long time where, like, after the first inning, I just wanted to head out, because I just had that vibe that it was going to be bad.
I know what you mean.
Like, they gave up those back-to-back home runs. Like, right as I got in, they gave up the back-to-back home runs to Semien and Vlad Guerrero Jr. And then I'm thinking, okay, here we go. It's another Taillon bomb. And Taillon, I'll give him credit because he had a good, like, midsummer. Now he then looked like he was falling off. I can't really shame Taillon either. He pitched as well as he could, all things considered. When you look at the lineup that the Blue Jays have, only giving up, 2 or 3 runs, that's really not too bad.
Yeah.
And I would say that the Yankees failed with runners in scoring position, except they hardly ever got runners in scoring position, because now you have DJ LeMahieu freaking hitting into double plays left and right. It's like, what happened to the guy who, like, won the batting title, like, in 2020? And what happened to the guy who, like, in 2019 was probably the most valuable player of this team, because he was the only guy that wasn't even hurt that year. And then you go into the 9th inning, you knew it was inevitable they were going to lose, but they had to put Brooks Krisky in there. And he loads the bases, he throws a meatball to Marcus Semien, and he hits it right into the left field seats. You just knew. It was I can't even remember the last game I went to where I just knew it was over after the first inning. I really can't. That's how bad it's been.
Yeah, it's been a bad stretch, and hopefully, uh, this like we talked about this upcoming Subway Series is going to tell a lot about both teams and see which
And to
team
top
cares
it
for
all
them.
off, Garrett Cole hurts his hammy tomorrow.
Of
That's
course,
just great.
of course.
That is the one guy we could ill afford to lose. Now, granted, has Cole always had his best stuff this year? No. I'll be the first to admit that. But lately he's been the one pitcher. Actually, well, no, maybe you could argue Jordan Montgomery. He's been pretty solid too.
Yeah.
I just wish he could get more run support. He has been the one pitcher, and he's been a true ace. He's the guy that in big games, he's like, jump on my back. I got this. We're going to win these games. The type of pitcher that we haven't seen since Carson Charles Sabathia. Then he hurts his hammy, and we don't even know how long he's going to be out. Hammy injuries are no joke.
Mm-hmm. At the worst time.
And if the Yankees, God forbid, miss the playoffs by even one game, that's going to be one reason that I think it's going to be the case. But I think the main reason is because, well, you had that stretch where they struggled hitting with runners in scoring position. And then you also had that stretch where you lose 7 games to the Orioles. 7 games to the Orioles. That's 16% of Baltimore's wins. Like, I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I'm sorry. I can't believe I'm like ranting like this, but like every time I watch this team lately, they make me want to pull out my hair. And not to mention, how many times do we have to see Gleyber Torres botch ground balls before we realize maybe we got to end that experiment too?
Yeah, this year's shown that he's not. He's much more comfortable at second base. Even though he came up as a shortstop, he's a second baseman. He needs to go back there. He's not a shortstop. Just too many.
He's pretty comfortable at second base too.
Yeah, that's the problem too. LeMahieu's at second base, so we're gonna have to figure some things out. So I don't know. As of now, even though like his bat isn't the same as, even though Gleyber is not having a great year offensively either, but Velasquez just brings a spark to this team. I would be more comfortable with him at short, just at the rest of the year for the most part. I would.
Yeah, I honestly can live with him. Maybe if they wanted to use him as a bit of a stopgap option before Anthony Volpe comes up, I think that wouldn't be such a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because Volpe looks pretty good. He's been raking it in AAA. Obviously, he's not ready yet, but let him get developed for another year or two, and then we'll see him. Hopefully, he can at least play shortstop. And, today really made me realize how spoiled we were at shortstop. But I'm going to talk about that ceremony right at the end of the show. Little tease for you guys. But before I really get any further, I want to show a few more of the comments here. John Rankin, JR, how's it going? Look up in that boss there in the Yankee shirt. Great to see you, John. Thank you for the comment. And guys, if you want to comment and talk to us and interact with us about the Subway Series and both of our teams, please do so in the comment section down below. And obviously the one and only Tom Scabetta. Good evening, gents. Tom, we wish you were on the stream with us. I'm sure you probably have a lot to say about your New York Metropolitans, but thank you for checking in as well. Always good to hear from you, my guy. And so I think having gotten my little Yankee rant fest out of the way, I think we should talk about the Subway Series itself. So the Friday night game, that's the one that we're all going to. I'm really excited to see you guys at Citi Field for that game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let me take a look at the pitching matchup. I believe you have Taijuan Walker. Hasn't been decided yet for the Yankees. What do you guys look for in that game?
To be honest with you, I think it's going to be. I think Corey Kluber was possibly going to be pitching for the Yankees. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah,
it hasn't been decided, but I think Kluber is the probable. That game is going to be interesting. Walker's been giving up the home run ball big time, so he's going to have to watch out pitching to Stanton, Judge, and Gallo. He's going to have to keep the ball down.
Actually, it's Montgomery who's starting.
Oh, it is going to be Montgomery. That's going to be good. So, since Montgomery's starting, then we probably, Nimmo's hurt, so Pilar is definitely going to start. Obviously Lindor, Baez, JD Davis will probably start. Maybe they might stick him in left field. He hasn't played left field since 2019, but I could see them trying to stick him in left field, sitting McNeil, and because Jonathan VR has been red hot, he has to play, and he's also a switch hitter. So Jonathan VR has been one of the hottest hitters in baseball over the past like week or two. He's been ridiculous, so he has to play. I could see JD Davis possibly squeezing him into the lineup. They're just going to have to. They're going to have to keep it going. They're going to just have to keep being aggressive on the base paths, the Mets, that is. They've been so conservative on the base paths all season long. We always heard that they were going to change the narrative this year. They're going to try to steal more bases. We brought in VR, we brought in Pilar, we brought in guys who have stolen base, previous stolen base records to their careers, and it really hasn't been the case except for the past couple of weeks when the team has shown like so much more life. Everybody's starting to steal bases. They're starting to get more aggressive on the base pass. So they got to just keep doing that. I think try to steal some runs. I think Taiwan's going to have to try to keep the ball down. Definitely needs to be conservative pitching to Stanton, Judge, and Gallo, especially with the amount of home runs Walker's been giving up the second half of this year. But those are really going to be the keys to the game, and just kind of and try to hit Montgomery around a little bit. Get guys on base, try to move them over. Just playing smart baseball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's easier said than done, but this is some of the things that I've been screaming about for the Yankees. Get them on, get them over, get them in. It's
Yep.
You'd think it was like trying to solve advanced calculus sometimes with like the way they played. But game 2, so if Montgomery is pitching on Friday, then that would probably mean that we would be seeing
Kluber.
Yeah, Kluber on Saturday. That's a game I'm probably going to have to give to the Mets with the way that Kluber is pitching, because if I'm going to be honest with you, Corey Kluber was brought back way too soon, and I think that was really evident in both of those starts. He did not look like he had it, and I'm really not confident about this game. I don't know who the Mets are throwing out there.
Yeah, the Mets are throwing out Trevor Williams. He's not great. I think that's a guy we could easily hit.
Yeah, I see.
I'm not worried about
Trevor Williams is on paper right now to start that game, but I don't think he's actually going to start that game. We've been using Trevor Williams as like our 6th starter when we have double headers, all that kind of stuff. So I think honestly, I think actually McGill's probably going to start Saturday, and Carrasco is probably going to start Sunday. Okay. So that's why I don't think it's going to be Williams, but they put down Williams because he's going to start the last couple of turns around the rotation because of some double headers and stuff. But he probably won't be pitching Saturday. I think it's going to be McGill, if I remember correctly.
We'll see. As for the Yankees offense, it could go either way, because how our luck is with a pitcher who hasn't really made too many big league starts
against Baltimore.
And obviously it's not great luck, obviously, as you know what I'm going at. Like every time usually I talk about that with a pitcher making his debut, but when it's like a pitcher in the National League, they often seem to like struggle. They make him look like Sandy Koufax, essentially.
It's true.
But I don't know. I think if there's one game I have to give to the Mets prediction-wise, I would say that it's Saturday. And for Sunday, obviously, you said it's going to be Carlos Carrasco pitching for the Mets.
Believe
and
so. Carrasco.
Let me try to do the math. Dom, help me out before I struggle trying to count the rotation in my head. I believe that probably would be Cole's spot, but we know how that's going to be. It's not looking good there. So
it'll be Tyone.
Yeah, I'm a little iffy about that. I want to say the Yankees win that game, but
I mean, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's been towards the second half of the year, he's been phenomenal. Like, I mean, besides a couple of starts against like the Blue Jays, giving up those home runs to guys who are red hot, like Vlad and Simeon. You just got to give him I think this is a good matchup for him. Honestly, I think eventually he'll have a pretty good.
That's true.
So I'll give him the edge in this one.
That's actually a good point, because he's faced National League lineups before. It's not going to be. He's not going to face a lineup that's quite as good as the Blue Jays, and so I think if I'm going to make a prediction, I'm going to tentatively say Yankees take 2 out of 3. But as I said the last time we did a show, I can't really say that with 100% confidence. But if they're going to do anything to save their season, and they have to win this series. And I think another reason that I'm going to take the Yankees 2 out of 3 is it's really based on past history, because every time the Yankees and the Mets will have 6-game Subway Series, like, it's always going to be a split, or at least more often than not.
Yeah.
Every now and then you'll maybe see one team taking 4 games and another, like, maybe every 2 to 3 years, and even rarely you'll see like somebody sweeping the entire thing. But that's only happened, I think, 2 or 3 times really ever since interleague play became a thing in 1997. So I'm gonna say the Yankees probably win 2 out of 3, but if I'm confident about that, then I'm lying. And I don't know about how you feel about the Mets, Paul, but I'm sure you probably aren't really as confident about 2 out of 3 either.
I'm going to say Mets could take 2 out of 3, but again, like you, I'm not extremely confident. I would say we win Friday, Saturday, and lose Sunday with Carrasco pitching. If anything's going to happen, I think Carrasco versus Tyone is going to be a high scoring game. I think that could end up being the shootout on Sunday Night Baseball. That one, because both pitchers have been struggling a little bit. Tyone's been a little bit better recently, but overall this season, saying Carrasco, has not been able to figure it out that well coming off the injured list. But I'm cautiously optimistic about Friday and Saturday. I think that those could be games that we could win, especially with Walker on the mound. And if McGill's pitching Saturday, I think he would. If Trevor Williams is pitching, that might be a different story. But even though Trevor Williams has been pretty solid his first few outings with the Mets, he got hit around a little bit against the Nationals on Sunday. But his other couple starts, he gave up like 1 run in 11 innings or something like that. But again, Trevor Williams, he's always due to get bombed once every few outings. So that'll be an interesting one. But if McGill's pitching, I think that we could definitely have the edge. He's been on fire.
Now, personally, I'm really interested, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Mets do for the pregame on Saturday. Because as we know, Saturday is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I don't know if you guys remember where you were. I remember being taken home from school pretty early by my mom. I had no idea what was going on, and obviously the impact of what happened to the whole city didn't really hit me until maybe I was a few years older, say about 10 years old.
Of course.
So I don't know. I like that the Mets are bringing back the whole NYPD caps. I think that's going to be a nice touch. And I don't know what type of ceremony they're doing. They'll probably have some band unfurl the flag in the middle of the field. But what I'm really also going to be looking forward to is, I know they're probably going to bring a lot of players from both of those teams back then. And I think the Joe Torre first pitch to Bobby Valentine, or actually, no, it's the other way around, because the Mets are the home team. They're going to have Bobby Valentine throw the first pitch to Joe Torre.
That's going to be awesome.
I would imagine there's probably not going to be a dry eye in the stadium that day.
No. And a bunch of the players from the 2001 teams, I know Piazza is going to be there.
He has to be.
Yeah, Piazza is a definite. I think John Franco is going to be there. There's a handful of the 2001 Mets that are definitely going to be there, and I would be shocked if a handful of the 2001 Yankees aren't there. So I'm sure they're going to have representatives from both of those teams.
I kind of one of the reasons that I kind of wish I was maybe 5 to 10 years older was because I think I would have really fully got to understand how great of a run the Yankees and Mets made. Now, granted, I know the Mets did not quite make the playoffs. I know they tried making a late run right at the end of the season, but they unfortunately missed out on the wild card. But I think the thing that resonated with everyone was the first New York City sporting event, July 21st, 2001. Braves are up 2-1. It's the bottom of the 8th. I don't know why I can't remember the Braves relief pitcher off the top of my head, but the Mets had a runner on first. Mike Piazza comes up. And listen, you can be a Yankee fan like me and still appreciate how great of a moment that was, because while obviously it didn't completely heal the city, because given what a lot of these families went through, nothing, it takes a lot to really recover from what happened like that. Mike Piazza's home run at least provided like a little bit of medicine. And every time I watch the highlight of that game, like I get the chills, like just seeing him pumping his fists and seeing how much Shea shook back and forth. Really, both of our stadiums back in the day shook back and forth.
No.
Such an amazing moment. And it was such a majestic home run, too. It was like so high up in the center field and it goes right down. Incredible.
Yeah.
And Gianfranco, I don't know if you know this, but fun fact, I believe his father was a New York City firefighter. He actually wore a shirt of, or not a firefighter. He did something for the city. I don't remember what it was, but he wore one of his father's like shirts representing like blue collar of New York.
Yeah.
That he pitched. And I think one of the reasons Met fans really loved him so much was because he was a New Yorker. And I think he pretty much related to all the blue collar workers.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely true. That was a special night without a doubt, kind of just, took your mind off of everything that was going on, for both of the teams. That was the great part. George Bush throwing out the first pitch at the Yankees game too. Just a few iconic moments. No matter
that
like
was October 30th, 2001. That was Game 3 of the World Series.
Yeah, that was the World Series. That was amazing. And then obviously you had the game September 21st for the Mets. Their first game back. So it was amazing. And it was just, I, similar to you, just like you said, I wish that I was old enough to really watch that and like appreciate it when it happened. I do remember 9/11, to a degree. We were all, pretty much 4 or 5 years old at that time, but I remember a little bit, but it's not enough to, appreciate those kind of moments like the Piazza home run.
So, and for me personally, I don't know how you feel about this, Dom. Whenever I look at Yankees like playoff runs, the 96 through 2001, or really I should say 98 through 2001, because the 97 Yankees lost out in the division series. The Yankees had a streak of playoff series that they won that in the wild card game, and given the way like certain teams make the playoffs, I don't think you're going to see a streak like that ever again. And for them to go for what would have been their 4th consecutive championship with that whole backdrop made everything. I think it gives me all the chills every time I really look at the highlights. Like, they were if I remember correctly from what I looked up, they actually had a bit of a fight with the Red Sox for like the first half of the season. Then the Red Sox faded. They had a really bad stretch, and the Yankees pretty much had the division all wrapped up by the time the middle of September rolled around. And so they got to the playoffs, and it really was the last gasp of that old guard of the Yankees because Paul O'Neill was retiring after that season. Chuck Knobloch was going to leave as a free agent. Scott Brosius ended up retiring. Tino Martinez was also a free agent. He ended up going to the Cardinals the next year. So I feel like that last playoff run for the Yankees really could have been like a last dance a la the late 90s Bulls. So it was really amazing. They were down 2-0 against the Oakland A's in the division series. And one of the things that's in my intro video for this show is the Derek Jeter flip play. And I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the show because for a reason that you obviously know why. But that play, to put it simply, is one of the most heads-up plays that you will ever see by any shortstop. Like, you have to know exactly where the ball is going. For him to be able to throw, I think it was Jeremy Giambi that he threw out. Incredible. It changed the whole series. Now, granted, the A's probably, at the very worst, would have just tied the game. Maybe the Yankees still would have won. But, the fact that it saved them and it catapulted the Yankees to a comeback in that series, and then for them to roll over a Seattle Mariners team that won 116 games, it was amazing. And then to top it all off, you had the World Series. Now, obviously, the Diamondbacks were the better team if you really look at the numbers. But the Yankees had those 3 magical nights at the stadium. As Paul mentioned, you had the day George Bush threw out the first pitch, a perfect strike, mind you. And then the next day on Halloween night, Tino Martinez hits a home run to tie it, and the Derek Jeter becomes Mr. November just as the clock struck midnight. And then the next day you had Brosius hitting a tying home run hours after Paul O'Neill was getting serenaded by the bleacher creatures in his last home game. And to have them win that in the 12th inning, you couldn't help but feel like it was destiny for the Yankees. But unfortunately, we know how that series ended. The Yankees lost a tough one, and I could go more into detail really about that whole playoff run and how after the Yankees lost, it really changed the way the team was. Like, they really slowly lost level of invincibility after that. But even with that World Series loss, I think those were all special moments for a city that was healing. And that Yankee team, like, for a lot of reasons, I wish that Yankees team could have really won it all. But when I really look back at it, like, given that it was a 9/11 backdrop, I think that's one of the main reasons why I wish the Yankees had won that World Series. And that's really the one loss I would reverse in Yankee history. But nonetheless, it's a special team, and you can maybe argue that it was the greatest team of all time. And for them to, like, be united during that whole, like, month or two afterwards, it was truly amazing. And it's great to really learn more about that as I got older and to really know how big that was. Dom, do you have any thoughts?
Thoughts of what?
Like, I want to see if you have anything you wanted to expand on before I move on to the Hall of Fame.
Not really. Can't wait to talk about the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, sorry. I had so much to say about that season.
Okay.
I can't help it. You know me with looking up baseball history and all that stuff.